This is an L.I.C.G production video in support of mental well-being in our community. The project is sponsored by the Leitrim County Council COVID-19 Emergency Funding. Welcome to Culture Through Storytelling. I am Patricia Clarkson. I will be introducing you to my cultural background and also read to you an excerpt memoir from our book, Words from the Planet. I am wearing my print. It is called a print with a head tie, and I've just got some jewelry here, earrings, bracelets, all from Sierra Leone. Now this is a print that Creoles would wear, and I'm wearing it because my background is from the Creoles, and we are from Freetown, Sierra Leone, and Sierra Leone is on the west coast of Africa. My original Creole ancestors were former enslaved Africans who fought for the British in the American War of Independence in exchange for their freedom. They also include the Black Londoners and the Maroons, who were escaped slaves who fought against the British in Jamaica, and also those freed from the slave ships along the Atlantic Ocean. The Creoles received their promised freedom when the slave trade was abolished in 1807, and they eventually got sent to Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone, which later became a British colony. Today, the Creoles make up about 2% of Sierra Leone's population. The official language of Sierra Leone is English, but there are 23 living languages in the country. The most widely spoken major languages are Mende, Timini, Limba, and Creole, with Creole being the most locally used language. Now I'd like to read to you an excerpt from my memoirs that I wrote with the Leitrim International Community Group back in 2017, and we published this book, Words from the Planet. Okay, the excerpt that I've chosen is called My Creole Heritage. To have lived in Sierra Leone in the 60s and to have been able to travel and live abroad was only a dream for many. To the locals, I was considered privileged, not only because I had those opportunities at an early age, but also because I was born into the Creole community. I was born into wealth as far as they were concerned. This kind of thinking was beyond my understanding, considering I was a descendant of the freed slaves who came and settled in Freetown many decades before me. My ancestors, the Creoles, were strangers in Sierra Leone and had to learn to live with the various cultures in the country. They had had humble beginnings, yet their presence was seen as intimidating by the locals whom they had come to join. The Creoles, of course, had lived abroad, some in the United States and others in the United Kingdom. This exposed them to the better levels of education and to the English language. The locals hadn't had such opportunities and so felt frustration and anger towards the Creoles. I appreciated that growing up in my time, however, was nothing like it had been for my earlier Creole relatives. I was proud of my heritage and embraced it. Sierra Leone was home to me. As a child, my lineage didn't bother me. But as I got older, the dark side of my ancestral tree haunted me. My true heritage was lost at sea. The power and horror of slavery had a major impact on the identity of Creoles. However, with the passage of time, we have found a way to heal from its crippling wounds. Nowadays, the technology developments such as ancestral DNA kits, not knowing my true ethnicity, can become a thing of the past. One day, after watching an insightful program on TV, I got to thinking, I could do something about it. I could take that one step nearer to knowing the truth of my family's past. An instant ethnic origin report, maybe. It looked good on paper. The advert for it dazzling me, filling me with all sorts of ideas. But it didn't entice me enough. Yet thoughts lingered, exciting and scary. Did I really want to know my true origins? What if I found out something I didn't like? I chose to pass. I'd heard the saying, ignorance is bliss. Now that was a story about my Creole heritage, and if you remember before before I started telling the story, I did give you a bit of background on my Creole descendants, and this story is sort of written around that idea and knowledge of where I came from, or where the Creoles came from, and more about my ancestors. I hope you enjoyed listening to this memoir. Thank you. Now I'm going to read another story, my second memoir from the same book, Words from the Planet. And this memoir is called Embracing My Culture. I was eager to start primary school in Sierra Leone, wanting to learn the language and the culture all at once. I didn't waste any time making friends. I learned how to play akra, adai, and hopscotch with the girls during our lunch break. They taught me to eat strange foods my mum didn't cook or give us at home. Foods like gramantine, a tiny root bulb, which was a fruit from the grass that grew in the schoolyard. How daring we were. Of course, Mum and Dad were not aware of such things. I had no plans to tell them either. I'd spent hours learning to tie the wrapper skirt and head tie my mum bought me. This was the African attire worn by the women. The fabrics were colourful, mostly cotton. Cloth dye was used to create flamboyant designs. The women had various methods of printing the designs onto the materials. Some fabrics were woven together on special machines. I craved games portraying real-life activities. Pretending to be a market stall seller or street seller was exciting. I loved cooking my own green soup recipes inside empty tomato cans over pretend wood fires I made from small stones and sticks. Having used ingredients from Mum's kitchen, I often got our maids in trouble because I wasted food. When things went missing, they ended up in my cooking pot. I sold peanuts, orange fruit, greens, and palm oil. All stones, of course. I carried my doll on my back with a cloth, as the sellers did. I even used their dialect when selling my goods to my customers, which were branches from neatly planted flower beds. The poor leaves were my victims. I played at being teacher, using them too as my students. I caned the lot of them, leaving shreds of leaves and branches on the floor. My actions caused many problems between my parents and the landlord. You could see how mischievous I was as a child growing up, but it was fun back in the days. It was fun growing up as a child in Sierra Leone. The weather was fantastic, of course, and the children were quite friendly. So I hope you enjoyed listening to my memoirs, and thank you very much for tuning in and watching my video.